Hello, thank you for joining us today. My name is Nathan Rolfe. I'm the President of the Association of U.S. Cyber Forces, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. On behalf of the Tortora Brayda Institute and the Association of U.S. Cyber Forces, I'd like to welcome you to this month's episode of our Cyber Workforce Series, where we speak with cyber professionals about their careers and journeys to help inform others on the diversity of the paths that are available within the cybersecurity industry and hopefully support you, the listener, on your own personal cyber career journey. Before we meet this month's guests, I'd like to take a moment to share a little bit of information about the two organizations that are making this series possible, the Tortora Brayda Institute and the Association of U.S. Cyber Forces. The Tortora Brayda Institute was created to promote collaboration across public and private sectors with a focus on business, culture, and diversity. Tortora Brayda looks to reshape and develop collaboration and partnering practices with a view to improving and securing business and economies. A core concept of the Institute is their think tank for partnership in AI and cybersecurity. The think tank has allowed Tortora Brayda to bring together experts and leaders from the public and private sectors and academia around the world to reshape and develop collaboration and partnering practices while embracing the most critical technology growth. If you are not currently a member of the Institute, we invite you to visit their website at www.tortorabrayda.org to learn more and see how you can participate. The Association of U.S. Cyber Forces is a nonprofit professional association that provides the voice for members of the cyber workforce who serve in the military, government agencies, industry, and academia on specific cyber issues impacting national security. AUSCF is an advocate for positive change to policies and programs that better serve their membership and help minimize gaps between the private and public sector cybersecurity efforts. If you would like to learn more or join AUSCF, please visit their website at www.auscf.org. During today's discussion, please feel free to drop any questions into the chat as time allows, and we will attempt to weave in those answers to your questions as we go through the time. Today's guest is Valerie Thomas. Valerie is an independent cybersecurity consultant with over 20 years experience in the industry, primarily in the areas of penetration testing, security engineering, and physical security assessments. She is a published author, public speaker, trainer at DEF CON, and social engineering specialist. My poor attempts at describing her career will simply not do her justice. And so let's go ahead and dive in and meet her. Valerie, welcome. And thank you for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Is there anything about your background that I completely missed? You are well secured personally in this industry, and so you don't put a lot out there for people to find out about. What did I miss in that background that really describes what your general career is right now?
My general career right now is sort of juggler of everything. So in addition to cyber and physical security, generally speaking, I've also been doing a lot of work in ICS SCADA. And the past 4 years of my career have been very heavy in the public transportation sector and the railway. So I've definitely added to that portfolio a little bit, expanded quite a bit on more of the federal and the enterprise of my earlier career, and which really means that I get more toys and more hard hats.
Awesome. Add to that collection that's in the background there.
Yes. So there's another collection of hard hats to the side that you can't see. I think kind of Psychopath has 6 hard hats for various reasons, especially for a lot of physical testing. Sometimes you just need to assume the vendor. So I have quite a few vendor hard hats that I come across here and there.
All right, we'll definitely get into that. But let's go ahead and start off. What initially sparked your interest in cybersecurity and led you to get into this line of work?
Wow, that's a long time ago. So I was just about to finish my undergrad in electronic engineering. This is about 22 years ago. And I was working at the college bookstore, and that was the time that Kevin Mitnick's The Art of Deception was published. And I remember talking to the book rep and asking if I could have a desk copy of it, which is basically their code for, hey, give me a free book because I don't want to buy it. So it showed up on my desk the next week, and I couldn't put it down. And I was like, wait, you could be a hacker and not go to prison. This is actually a career path. So that sparked my interest right before I got out of school with the double E, and kind of started me on this trajectory of looking for things in network security and cybersecurity. Because back then it wasn't called cybersecurity, you know? Um, Back then it was just security stuff, and you had to know a guy who knew a guy who would teach you some things.
So was it that book then that really showed you that this was the path that you wanted to go on? Was there any other types of engagements that you had where you had that epiphany moment? This is aha. This is what I want to do when I grow up.
So it was definitely the book that started me on that trajectory. Um, right out of school, nobody was hiring engineers to do engineering work at that time. So I actually got into the federal intern program with DISA, and worked through the telecommunications specialist area. And that really put me in a perspective of, okay, this is how we do networking. This is how we learn security. This is how we do it in support of warfighter. And that really started to help me hone the skills and the areas of what I really wanted to focus on, which was really just coming up with good testing solutions and helping strengthen those forces and those protections.
All right. So you described a path that pretty much started after you completed your undergrad.
Yes.
So what I mean, was there anything about that degree that prepared you for this, or what other kind of education pathways did you go through, such as certifications or other classes and trainings?
So back in that day, there weren't classes and trainings really. That was way before CISSP or CEH or any of those things. So a lot of my knowledge, that core base, was built on the hacker mentality of like learning in the community and learning from somebody who could teach you. Later on, I started to do some training and pick up some certifications as things like regulations like DoD's 8570 came out that required certain certifications for certain jobs. But those were more formality at the time for me. Most of my learning has always just been grassroots, hands on keyboard, out talking to folks in the community. Where my electronics background came in very handy was once I started really crossing over into physical security and studying things like access control and RFID systems. There's a lot of hands-on circuitry and understanding the concepts of antenna design and how these systems interact with each other at a component level. So then I got to dust off a lot of that knowledge. It definitely gave me an advantage in that sense because I already knew how to do all those things. I knew how to solder. I knew how to reverse engineer different pieces of hardware. So that definitely gave me a leg up in that particular area. I just kind of went about it backwards.
Fair enough. So you've kind of got a little bit of tinkering to add to your hacking then.
Oh, yes. Yes, there's a lot of tinkering. I was one of those kids that used to take things apart. My early introduction to electronics was actually pinball repair. I have an aunt that put herself through school doing arcade and pinball machine repair. So when she would watch us in the evenings, that's what we would do, was we would repair pinball machines. So it really kind of started me down this path from a young age in an unknowing type of way.
So that's an interesting point, that idea that there may have been some signs early on when you were much younger, well before college, that this was potentially a path for you. Or was there anything else where you kind of, even now through hindsight, look back and say, aha, it was always going to be this way because, look what I did as a kid or as I was going through school?
Yeah, my first hack was at 15. There was a boy, and I was too shy to ask him out. So instead of asking him out, I hacked his account and left him a cute little note on his desktop. That did not work out very well, but looking back, it was one of those moments. There were a couple other moments with things like fake IDs, things that definitely alluded to a career in security, even though I grew up in a time and place that was not technology advanced, let's say. I grew up in the Midwest, so computers were not a thing.
Okay. So predating Tinder, you're out there using
Yeah.
computers for those means. So after you've really graduated college then, and you kind of just started going down this, what was your first real role that you can say this is where my cyber career started, that you were working in?
Definitely at DISA. Going through the intern program there, they put you in a lot of different areas to learn about the agency. They put you in a couple of different physical locations. I supported DISA Europe for a handful of months. I supported missions and exercises, so I was interfacing with the warfighters, around the world on a daily basis. And it was a lot of education on the fly, especially back then. We didn't have a lot of, VTC type technology. That was reserved for the really important people. So I did a lot of trying to teach certain concepts and reinforce certain concepts remotely, across several time zones over the phone and with MS Paint, unfortunately. So that was really right from the get-go when it really started coming together. That was not a pen tester role, though. So it took me several more years of moving around in the agencies. I got to Joint Interoperability Test Command, which did a blue team. So defensive side, and they did quite a few exercises throughout the year. So that was really sort of my adjacent move into learning more of the aggressor side, was starting out with blue team.
Would you say that's a typical career path for somebody that's trying to get into more of the penetration red team kind of environment, or is that just something that was unique to how your life went?
I have no idea. I have no idea how other people got into their stuff. I like to describe mine as I fell into it, because I think at the time that was very common. There was no curriculum of, oh, I want to do this. I'll go get a CEH and I'll take this class and then it'll be good, So it was very tinker and network based, not just network on the technology side, but networking on the people side, way before LinkedIn and way before Tinder. So I guess I came up the old school way. And I think it makes a difference quite a bit, actually, in the way that I approach different pen tests and assessments and problems versus somebody who may have used a more prescribed checklist. I see a lot of patterns of some of my younger engineers that I've trained over the years that, first we do X, then we do Y, and then we do Z. Like, okay, that's good. But what if Y doesn't work? How do we get to Z? They're like, oh, well, we don't. Like, well, we do. There are other ways to get there. Let's look at what those ways are. So I definitely feel that my experience and my career path has definitely given me a different methodology and approach to how I work with problems in pen testing, as opposed to a more prescribed way.
So that's a very interesting point. I guess you've kind of brought in a little bit of the art into the science of this career field. And as you talk about some of the folks that are coming up in this industry now that have a more prescribed path to them, how do you encourage creativity and innovation if they're not going through the same self-taught challenges that you went through, and basically you're being told this is how you do it, follow the script?
So I encourage a lot of folks that are doing very prescribed methodologies to start looking at other ways to do this. Whether if that's, oh, I need to move this file from this machine to this machine. Oh, it doesn't have FTP open. Okay, that's fine. You can move that file a couple of different ways with Netcat. Do you know how to do that? And most of the time, the answer is no, because they've always had other tools available to them. So that's usually when I really encourage folks to start to go back and look at a lot of the native tools that are in Linux. Especially, pen testers, because there's a tool for almost everything, but a lot of what you need is already there. And there's no school like the old school. So if you don't know how to move that file with Netcat, you should learn how to move that file with Netcat, because you may be on a test where you compromise a host and there's no other way to move your data. So I try to encourage a lot of, all right, let's look at this organically. Look at what's available to you and practice using it in your home lab. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can literally just put up a very basic VM and just move things back and forth between your host and the VM without any risk to you if you don't have a full platform, let's say, to practice on.
You mentioned that because you got into this before a lot of the real curriculums were there in the schools, that you kind of did your own outreach into the community, trying to basically learn from whoever you can learn from. Does that environment still exist today for folks that want to go beyond what's simply being taught in the classroom?
Absolutely. So before it was, very disjointed, I guess you could say. It's very, very message board centric and, very, very early 2000s, 90s type technology. But the resources are everywhere. And even basic things in GitHub, there's code, but there's also usually a little bit of documentation of, oh, I want to learn how to use this tool, or I want to learn how to do this. Let's go read it. You can reach out to the contributor. Most of the time, they'll be happy to talk to you. And the in-person resources still exist. Like a lot of the local groups, like the local DEF CON groups, where you can go out and actually meet folks and network that way. Nova Hackers, Fredericksburg Hackers, for those who are in Northern Virginia. Those are two still very active areas where you can go out and meet up with folks once a month and just talk about different projects or something that you're interested in. And
you teach at DEF CON, so you provide some of this kind of community event already?
Sometimes, yes. It's been a couple of years now. I usually submit every 2 or 3 years. Usually I'll teach 1 or 2 4-hour workshops while I'm there. So the last one, I did a physical access control workshop and a introduction to industrial control systems, just to give everybody just a quick little, a few hours out of your con time, get a little introduction, get some resources, and get started, and to meet other people who are interested.
All right. You said something a couple questions ago that the term social networking to kind of develop and get into the more red teaming type of path. You also have a self-proclaimed title as a social engineering specialist.
This is true. This is true.
That's not the normal, what we picture, a hacker in a sweatshirt with a bottle of Mountain Dew in their hands kind of scenario. Talk a little bit more about what you do with social engineering and how you got into that very niche area within this work, please.
So I got interested in social engineering right from the get-go from reading The Art of Deception. And I thought that was really, really interesting, how Kevin was able to access these systems, not just by his technical means, but if he would hit a roadblock technically, he would find a way to get the information from somebody else. And I found this really interesting because it wasn't so much as the technology, it was more of a hacking of the mind. So I dove really deep into how the mind works in psychology and neurolinguistic programming, the art of selling. They're very similar because you basically paint a story. You give a scenario that describes a plausible reason as to why you are where you are or why you need what you need. And psychologically speaking, the brain wants to tell itself a story anyway. So when you fill in those blanks, it really helps kind of just clear the path to the information that you need. One of the challenges that I ran into pretty early on was being a woman trying to do technical social engineering, because a lot of the traditional scenarios didn't work well for me. That story didn't add up very well. If I showed up to say, hi, I'm here to fix the telephone, in the early 2000s, that's really suspicious. Women don't work for the telecom company. Girls don't computer. What are you doing? So I really had to delve into the psychology of things and adapt a lot of what I thought would be believable scenarios in order to get where I needed to be. And it was really just kind of a love at first sight thing. The human mind is fascinating, and we can add technology on as much as we want, but we can never really remove the human element fully. And as long as that exists, there will always be areas for social engineering.
Is social engineering a path someone can actively pursue through their education, or is it something that you almost have to have a passion for and independently go after, like you described?
I've never looked at formal education pieces to it. I'm not sure how many resources exist for that, more than what did years ago, I'm sure. But I think it's more of a passion, special interest type path. I don't just do social engineering. I use it to augment my technical testing. So it's kind of a additional skill on top of the technical, you could say.
And you also augment with the physical side of the house as well, correct?
I do, yes. Earlier on in my career, doing a lot of the cyber testing, clients started asking, oh, well, can you also look at the physical security of our data center or our building or our complex? So, yeah, I could do that. Because as a consultant, usually the answer is always yes. Of course I can do that for you. So I really did a lot of that learning on the fly, and reaching out to a lot of folks in the industry, the folks over at Red Team Alliance and Core Group, very early folks in the space like Johnny Long with No Tech Hacking. And again, I had to develop a lot of my own scenarios. Being a female, I had to adapt a lot of my personas and my characters, for lack of a better term, of who I was and why I wanted to be there if I was to be caught. But since then, I've definitely delved more into the technical side of it, really picking apart access control systems and understanding how they work, why they work, how they integrate with the enterprise. It's a lot of gray area there of responsibility between physical security and network security. And, as an attacker, that's exactly where I want to pinpoint for my attack. So that's my passion area, is really helping draw attention to those areas and pulling those two groups together internally and helping them come up with better solutions.
Right. That's a extremely well-rounded and diverse set of skills that you bring to the table. What's a typical day look like for you as you're doing these consulting projects, or is there even such a thing as a typical day?
Not so much as a typical day. It's a little all over the place, especially as an independent. A lot of it, my day is spent doing scoping, talking with folks about what they want to do, what their goals are. Usually while that's going, I'm usually running a web app test in the background. So there's some scanning and some automated testing about some other things. And then while I'm doing that, usually there's some research on the latest trends in the physical space. Are there new alarm systems that are out? Are there new access control card formats that my clients might have questions about? So I'm constantly pulling data and reading and ingesting a lot of things while still doing a lot of the day-to-day business stuff.
All right. What would you say, I guess, is probably one of the coolest aspects of your job?
All of the different technologies that I get to access. I've definitely seen some pretty amazing systems, from things like train control systems and switching to large federal systems for various cash flow applications and things that really literally move money around the country. I've really got to see just some absolutely astounding technologies throughout my career. And although they're workaday to folks who deal with them every day, to those of us on the outside, it's very it's very awe-inspiring. It's not magic, but it is very awe-inspiring about, oh, okay, well, this is how we move money around from a federal perspective of a banking system. This is how this gets from here to there, and kind of lifting the veil on a lot of the everyday things that we just don't even think about. It has been really, really satisfying.
On the flip side of that, are there any necessary evils, parts of the job that you do because you have to, but it's not necessarily the most fun?
There's always a little bit of that. When the travel gets a little stacked up, that gets a little rough. You go from back to back to back trips. I enjoy report writing, which is usually uncommon for a pen tester, because that's your deliverable, and that's really the record of what happened. So it doesn't matter how amazing you did and how you talked this guy out of his password and how you broke into this building. If it's not properly documented and presented, then all of that was for nothing. So I really enjoy putting together custom graphics and telling the story and presenting the risk in a way that it can be digested and actually actioned upon, because really that's what it's all about.
All right. As we're getting close to the end of our time here,
Yeah.
final questions. What kind of advice would you give someone that wants to essentially follow in your footsteps? Certainly the education path is different now than
Sure.
what you went through, but as far as what kind of courses, certifications should they pursue? Is there particular types of work that you would recommend they definitely look for?
So for pen testers, you absolutely must love learning. And I'm constantly re-educating and learning new things every day, every single day, whether that's a different piece of technology or a different API for how this interface works or a different programming language. You'll have to learn something new for every assessment, and sometimes you have to learn it overnight, literally. So if you don't love learning, I don't recommend going into penetration testing, because you will always have to be learning to do it well. For education, there are a couple of different paths, with the basics of things like the CEH certification. There are a lot more companies these days that are open to hiring juniors and helping, put them through their own program of teaching. I highly recommend those types of programs, because that's when you'll get to really sit down and learn with folks who have done this for a very long time. And you'll start to get those different perspectives that aren't checklist driven.
As you talk about being essentially a lifelong learner, how do you, or what kind of resources are out there for folks that want to continue to stay abreast of what's the latest technology? And along those lines, do you see any emerging trends in where this career path is going?
So there are definitely resources that are non-paid. There are usually basic articles on various technologies and different, types of APIs. A lot of times that actual vendor will give you the documentation so that you can learn it. Same thing with things in like the ICS and the SCADA industry. A lot of that information is out there. You just have to kind of dig for it a little bit. Trending wise, it's been a little bit different lately in the industry, and I'm not sure if we're going to see much change in education, if we're going to see more rigid curriculums. But training doesn't have to be expensive to be good. There are plenty of very affordable Udemy classes or free courses or even just slide decks that you can get your information from. So You don't have to spend thousands of dollars to learn.
Awesome. Well, Valerie, we are, I think, even just a little bit over time. I want to say thank you for sharing your experience with us and with the community that's joined us here. If anyone watching or listening wants to stay connected with you, is there a way for you, for them to do so? Social media, LinkedIn, things like that?
Absolutely. I am on LinkedIn. It is Hacktress09 on LinkedIn and on X.
You almost said Twitter, right?
I did. I had to think about it just for a second.
All right. Well, thank you again, Valerie. For those watching and listening to the discussion today, thank you as well. Today's discussion is being recorded and will be posted on websites for both Tortora, Brayda, and AUSCF, as well as our social media channels. Both Tortora, Brayda Institute and Association of U.S. Cyber Forces are committed to reshaping and empowering diverse collaboration and developing the cyber workforce. And this is the reason why we do what we do. And we hope today's conversation has helped you, if you're listening, on what your cyber professional path looks like. So on behalf of Tortora, Brayda, and AUSCF, I want to say thank you. Thank you again to Valerie Thomas. And we look forward to having you join us on our next workforce series. Thank you.